Hello, horror fan, best friends, and ghoulish knights, and welcome to the 7th episode of Murders with Mertens. I am your host, Joe, and this is a podcast about horror, home invasion horror, sci-fi horror, body horror, the horror-adjacent, thrillers, the supernatural, the psychologically terrifying, scary films in general. Each episode, I intend to sit down with a guest and discuss one of their favorite scary films so that we can gush about everything that makes it just so damned cool. Viewers, new and old, thank you for tuning in to this fledgling podcast. You can always provide some much needed support of this little endeavor by subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and dropping a comment below to keep the conversation going. It's all greatly appreciated. So let's not waste any time in introducing this evening's guest, Demetrius Newell. Dim, how the hell are you?
You're doing great, Joe. Thanks for having me on this lovely horror podcast. Can't wait to talk about what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, man. For those that don't know, who are you?
I'm Demetrius Newell, also known as Gifted Dim 63. You could catch me in kind of funny chats back in the day, not so much lately, but I'm really big on doing like fitness videos and stuff for TikTok now, and that's really who I am now. And I'm a huge gamer, as we all know.
Yeah. Well, I've gotten to know you over the years just through the Kind of Funny community, and a lot more in the past year or so through the horror community. We definitely have a mutual love there. Without wasting too much more time, tonight's film is the 2008 psychological horror / home invasion horror film, The Strangers, written and directed by Brian Bertino and starring Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman. Bertino would go on to direct one of my favorite horror films of the past couple of years, and I'm sure it's one of yours as well, The Dark and the Wicked. Yeah, that's a film. That
I know different from this one.
It is, and I know we've talked about just how unsettling that one is. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about The Strangers. Dim, what's your history with this film?
So I actually saw this movie at my first duty station when I was active duty Air Force. It came out and they played it at the base theater. So I actually watched this on base at the little base theater. When you go to a base theater, it's nothing too crazy. Basically, just got the regular seating like a regular theater would, but it's got like a stage and a small screen. It's not like going to the actual big screen movie theaters, but it did the job, and it was usually a little bit cheaper. So I got to see this movie a couple times because I loved it right away, and it was. I'll always remember where I was when I watched it.
Nice. I know this was one where my ex-wife and I were going through quite a horror binge. It was the disc version of Blockbuster's Netflix ripoff back in the day. So this would have been shortly after it was on DVD, I'm sure. And yeah, thought this was a pretty dope movie. I know she probably wanted to see it because she was obsessed with Felicity. So, Scott Speedman, the Felicity connection there. Yeah, it was a cool film. And it's one that I didn't really think about in the past few years until I saw it starting to pop up on podcasts. And, that kind of reignited a love for this film for sure. Why don't we just jump right in? What you were about to see is inspired by true events. According to the FBI, there are an estimated 1.4 million violent crimes in America every year. Chief among them is the fact that Larry Fishburne only does the opening voiceover in this film. And maybe it's not him, but if it isn't, it sure sounds like Lawrence Fishburne.
Sure does.
Yeah, I was not able to find anything one way or another except for a couple of Reddit threads, and he's certainly not credited. Nothing on IMDb, but I don't know. It sure as shit sounds like him.
Yeah, I don't know who does the voice.
I don't know. But right around this time, I'm trying to think what he was up to. I could go on IMDb, but I'm not going to bother. A few years after all of this, he started showing up like crazy in all sorts of stuff, and usually in roles like he's the authority figure in the movie, or the superior of the main character or something like that. And he had this great little renaissance. It's Always good to see him pop up and stuff. So if it's not
John Wick
him,
too.
yeah, absolutely. If it's not him, shout out to whoever it was that did the voiceover. You're not in the credits, so boo. So we start things off with some kiddos that, well, they're seeing some shit. They make this horrific 911 call. Thank God one of them has a cell phone on him. And then we cut to this really uncomfortable car ride. And, you know, we've all been there. You know, you either have a horrible argument with a significant other or something like that, and it is the most uncomfortable space, and you can't wait to get out of that car. But, yeah, I love all the little, I guess, environmental storytelling that we get in the beginning of this. You know,
I think it's right from the jump, like right when you start seeing the text and you hear the voice, you kind of get this feeling that you know that it's gonna go straight to the point. Like there's no that with the short runtime, I think it's only like an hour and a half, maybe an
yeah,
hour and 32 minutes, something like that.
yeah.
So they it's so concise and they make sure that they go right to the point. You see the kids outside, you know something happens. They show the camera panning around, you see blood spots on the walls. So you know like you're already uncomfortable because now you know that kids have found something. And
Mm-hmm.
then they cut to the night where you see the two driving in the car and you're like, okay, well, now they're coming home to something or coming to a place that the guy had and they know that you already know that they're going to be uncomfortable because they um they're arguing, they had an argument or something like that. The it's like a you can feel the tension in the car ride.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And little by little, everything kind of unfolds as far as what went down. But God, I love stuff that just doesn't treat you as being an absolute idiot. They're not going to spell out everything that happened, you know, and yeah, yeah, that kind of stuff sucks me in. So they get to the house, and I don't think it's ever clearly stated that it's you know, Scott's parents' house there, but you know, they have the little moment where, you know, he gets out of the car, grabs some mail, and she's smoking a cigarette, and then doesn't come into the house at first. And again, clearly some shit went down. But she steps in, and now we get, let's see here, Creepy Folk Sound number one, that damned record player. And it keeps coming back throughout the length of this movie. But, obviously, plans for a romantic weekend have fallen through. There's rose petals everywhere, champagne, all the shit, and you know they look like they just came from a funeral. And they head off to one of the bedrooms. She's going to take a bath, and you know he even goes so far as to unzip her dress for her and help her with her necklace. So clearly, there's some love there still. There's just something kind of horrible that's happened. And just anger hasn't had a chance to set in, and we'll find out why that would possibly be justified at some point a little bit later. It's so uncomfortable just watching all of
Yeah,
this.
I think you can see it more in his face that it was obviously something that he was planning. He wanted something to happen out of this night, and she almost looks like vulnerable, like something happened that was her fault, and he's angry about it. Now the night's ruined in both of their eyes, and it's yeah, that tension is just incredibly built. Like in that, it's only a span of what, like 5, 10 minutes.
Oh, I know this. We're definitely not even 10 minutes into this movie at this point, and yeah, you just it's like you want to see what's about to happen, but also you kind of just don't want to be there for it. So she's taking her bath, and you know, Scotty calls up Mike. For some reason, I keep using the actors' names in my notes just because it's how I think of most of these people. But got Glenn Howerton, ultimately, who shows up later from Always Sunny as his buddy Mike, and he, you know, says right there in the voicemail, "Yeah, you're probably drunk, but I'm gonna need a pickup in the morning because things have gone sideways, and he just kind of rambles on for a little bit. And yeah, it's probably his ride or die, right? But yeah, yeah. But we cut back to Liv taking the bath, and she thinks about what she did. And then we do get some flashbacks here, I think, of what happened earlier in the night. And God, they look so freaking in love for at least the first little bit. And
Yep, they sure did.
yeah, she's sitting there at the table chatting with friends. They're at a wedding, which, seemed fairly clear from their attire when they, in the beginning of this film. But Scott walks up with this big dopey look on his face, and they laugh and they talk for a little bit, and he's like, "Hey, let's go outside. I need to talk to you about something." And then we finally get what actually happened. He was going to propose, and it's very, very clear that she was not down. And
At least not in the moment, because
Yeah.
she, like, they don't explicitly say it, but I think it could have been a wrong time situation. Like, I'm sure that they had been together for a while, and it's not really clear, but you know, it. I mean, it happens all the time. Some people have that wrong time experience where it might not have been that night, but then they talk about it later, and then end up getting married anyway. But
Yeah.
because of the situation, I mean, it
Well,
was just all bad.
Yeah. Let's put it this way: a friend's wedding, is usually not the best place to propose to somebody, especially if this is something that you have not been talking about. And at least I kind of feel like that's the story here, that he was going to propose, but they've never really had the conversation about getting married, because
Yeah, I
she
agree.
makes that comment about just not being ready, right? And now you've sprung this on her at a big event where you're around friends and family and all that, and it's just horribly awkward. And suddenly the car ride and everything else makes complete sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, if he wasn't gonna propose and they just let the night play on, I'm sure that they could have had a great time at this
Oh
little
yeah,
getaway that they had planned. It would have still been horrific based off of what we see,
yeah.
but
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it would have been great at first.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Scott goes to the table there, and he's about to have some angry ice cream. He just throws that lid. He's it's all, the horrible sadness is subsiding a little bit, and it's more so just anger taking over, because he starts getting pretty short with her from here on out. You know, and then she sits down with him, and she has to tell him how nice everything that he did was. Now, in a situation like this where you were just your offer was not reciprocated there and everything, having somebody tell you how nice it all was, it just feels incredibly condescending in that moment, and just feels great, right? I feel like they're almost trying to set us up to just not like these people, in the sense that in some horror films you're rooting for the killers, right? They're the heroes of the piece, so to speak. Like your Jasons and your Michael Myers and everybody. Yeah, you're kind of cheering them on almost, and you want a reason for these people to be killed in horrible ways. I don't know. They're just becoming less and less likable the more this movie goes on, to a certain degree. At least for me, that's kind of what I'm picking up here. But
I think it's interesting that you say that the movie's kind of like pointing you in that direction, because from another standpoint, I would say that we don't really know, like, if we should like these people or not, because right up from the jump, it's like this could happen to anybody at any time.
yeah. I don't know. I had a very different reaction to this time than probably the first time that I saw it. I don't know. It's weird, but now we move on to some champagne and that wedding ring, or engagement ring rather. He slaps that on the table, and he's like, "I can't take this back. You need to keep this." And it's just, everything continues to make the situation more and more uncomfortable. And she says that she's sorry and all that, and Is it her? Is it Liv Tyler that goes back to the record player and puts something else on at this point? I feel like it is. I don't know. But we get Creepy Folks on number 2. And it just keeps going with this. And yeah, no, it is Scott that goes back over there because she comes up behind him and they have their little, you're my girl moment. And
Yeah, the little love scene.
yeah, they start to get it on there. And then, wow, that knock is so loud because I had the volume up to hear the dialogue a little bit better because, for one thing, his speaking voice is very, very soft. And you got to turn it up to be able to hear what the hell he's saying. And that knock comes in and is just shockingly loud.
It's like a dungeon door.
Yeah. Well, and they got those big, heavy wood doors on this house too. This
and
house.
It's coming from a girl, so it's like,
right.
Oh man.
Right. This is a house out of the 60s or the 70s, clearly by all the architecture and the decor and everything. And those doors are just heavy as fuck. And, they open the door and it's darkness outside. You see this girl standing there and she just says, "Hi."
That's so crazy. It's creepy as shit right here.
Yeah. And they're like, "Hi." And is Tamara here? And
they also say it's 4 a.m. Why are we getting a knock on the door?
Yeah, and shortly before that, we had the clock chiming, and that gives us our little hint how late this is too. If you're paying attention to that, 4 a.m, and this girl's banging on the door. Okay,
yeah,
cool. And no Tamara here. You sure? No, we're all good. No Tamaras. And then they get that creepy "see you later," and she just books it off the porch. Okay. And then it's very clear that they had unscrewed the light bulbs because, Scott turns them all back on because he had been flicking on the switch and the porch light wasn't coming on. And all right, so they're like, that's creepy, and obviously killed the mood because he's back on the couch sulking at this point. And we get that little, go get me cigarettes, bitch moment.
Yep. Well, it's not like that.
I know it's not.
Like, I'm not a cigarette, or I'm down to my last cigarette.
Right.
And like, okay.
Yeah. And he's like, I need to go for a drive to clear my head anyways. So we just had this super creepy encounter at 4 a.m. with a complete stranger on the front porch, but I'm going to leave you alone in my parents' creepy ass house. Why not? Right. So he does, he fucks off to go buy cigarettes, and you hear shortly before he takes off, it's clear that they were about to go on a road trip after this wedding.
Yeah.
This is the first time that I caught this. Wow, it just gets worse and worse. Not only was he trying to, propose and everything, but they were going to be together for an extended period of time after this. So that's probably why he wanted to pick up in the morning more so than just, okay, things didn't exactly work out and I want to be away from her. Wow. Okay, so yes. I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
I'm sorry. No, I was gonna say, it just for me, this is when you kind of have to suspend disbelief a little bit because it's like it's 4 a.m. You just had some weird lady come over, and you're gonna go and leave your lady. It just doesn't seem like something a regular person would do. Or you would say, "Hey, come with me," and you both go. Like.
Right. And maybe we're supposed to believe that, he is so upset about the situation that he would, fuck off down the road to the corner store. I don't know.
It looks pretty long, though. I mean, I didn't see no stores down there.
No, they're in the middle of nowhere. There's even an establishing shot before they get to the house where it's just this dark, dark lake. And you hear, little sounds of nighttime insects and birds and stuff. And it is clearly the middle of nowhere because it is so dark, impossibly dark. Okay, so he's good. I forgot about this bit. He does light a fire before he takes off. There's all these little things that happen before he leaves her alone, kind of setting the stage for all sorts of things to happen later on. So yeah, he starts that fire, and okay, he does indeed leave, and she puts on the record player. This is where I remember here we get Creepy Folks on number 3, and she tries on the ring, goes to take it off, can't quite get it off of her finger, and just decides, you know what, I'll leave it on and try it out. And then, she tinkers around with the piano a little bit, cracks a beer after, a night at a wedding and champagne at home. And okay, we're just going to keep this party going. All right, cool. And then knock, knock again. And it just it keeps going, and it is so loud. And
she says, "Is Tamara home?" through the doorway.
You're
like, oh my God.
Yup. It's like, you were already here. You already asked. Nope, no Tamara's here. And don't we get like an "Are you sure?" Yeah. Yeah. And that's where she notices the smoke from the fire. Now, we know if you were paying attention while Scott's building the fire, he does open up the flue before, lighting everything up. So, yeah, it's a little weird. And she goes over there, and boy, with a fire that's been burning for as long as it has at that point, I don't know if I would want to reach in barehanded to try to open that flue again, because that metal is going to be hot as fuck. But she does, and the smoke alarm's going off, and she climbs on a chair and, knocks it down and whatever. And
this is where she lights that cigarette, right?
No, not quite yet. But we get more knocks again, and they're so impossibly loud still. Yes. And this is where she starts freaking out because they're just pounding on things. And, she goes and looks for her cell phone. Her cell's dead. She finds her charger, plugs it into an Outlook that looks like it should have sparked and started smoking itself because it's so old. But she leaves it there by the fireplace to charge and goes and looks for the landline. And she decides, okay, now's a good time to get into some street clothes, right?
Now's the time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she wanted to leave the dress on because she felt pretty in it, right? And I get that. You feel miserable, and the cool clothes from dressing up for a wedding make you feel good, right? And totally understand, but also it's like, okay, weird shit is happening. It's time to get into some jeans, right? So she does that. She calls up Scott. He's like, yeah, I'll come back. It's whatever. I'm 30 miles down the road now because that's where the nearest corner store is, but sure, I'll come right back. And then the line goes dead. Oh, shit. So this is where she finds that final cancer stick there in the ashtray and lights it up. This is
when shit gets weird.
Oh, yeah. This is where we get the shot of the movie, right? It was on all the promotional stuff. It was like on the cover. And yeah, she's just standing there with her cigarette, and in the background we get man in mask walking into frame and just staring at her.
The really cool part, like just about how this framework is set up, you don't really see this in like movies where there's killers, where the person that you're worried about is in front, and then you see that person in the back. It's like it's such a wide shot. You see the whole kitchen, the whole living room area, and then you see him in the really dark section of the hallway, and you're like,
yeah, he's got the dark suit on and the super bright mask, so you get the wonderful contrast with everything, right? And it's like you said, super wide shot and everything. So it's like if she just happened to turn around, he'd be right there. And she goes and gets a glass out of the cabinet there, get some water and everything, and he's still standing there through the whole thing.
It was there for a long time.
Yeah, and she turns around because she hears a door close from inside the house. And that's when he's no longer there because, of course, he walked off and open and close the door, right? And she calls out for Scott, thinking that he's home. And she's definitely concerned because nobody answers. And okay, this came from inside the house. So she does the horror trope of looking for a knife and rifling through everything. She finds probably the dullest knife in the world because somebody's keeping it in a drawer and not in a block or something, right? But she finds a big ass knife. Good for her. And okay, when do you think Man in Mask? It's such a weird credit of Man in Mask because it's not Man in the Mask. It's not the man. It's just Man in Mask. It's weird. But when do you think he actually got into the house? Do you think he was maybe there when they got home?
I'd say probably around the time when they got the knock, because that's plenty of time for their kind of misdirection. And then he could have opened up a window or something in the back and then came in. Because my thought process is I believe that they might have scoped this house before. So this could have been planned even though they didn't know who lived there technically.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember when they pulled up if there were any lights on the house. I wasn't really paying attention for that. But yeah, like you said, they could have been casing the joint, from the beginning. And, again, I don't want to ruin the line for later, but, ultimately, knocked on the door and like, okay, this is it. I don't know. It seems like it would have been kind of loud, somebody coming into that house. Or maybe not. Like you said, the misdirection of, everything on the front porch. This is the time to slip in. But
Yeah, because
clearly,
I mean, you get the sense that they're definitely toying with their prey from the start. But the weird thing is, it's like, where was the wife with the truck the whole time? Like, she was just gone. Or
yep.
I guess the mother figure of the three.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a weird one. And we'll get to that in a minute, too. So there's another big knock, and she walks up to the door, and there's the chair where she had stood on it to get the smoke alarm, and she finds the smoke alarm is placed very neatly on the chair, and they had made sure to show you that it was on the floor, and like the battery was out of it and stuff, in a shot before, and okay, that's creepy. Yeah. So now she starts hearing wind chimes and scraping metal from outside a window. The wind chimes are scary enough, but this metal scraping, I don't know what the hell it is. But it's
It could have
effective.
been anything.
It's super effective. Yes. It's
Yeah.
some scary shit. And then she kind of pokes at the window treatments there with her knife, and you think that's where the scare is going to come, but no, it's when she throws the drapes wide there, and there he is. She screams, and he slams his hand on the glass, and this is where she falls backwards through all the chairs on the table and bumps the record player, and we get this skip of several seconds that keep repeating over and over and over again. And
That's in the
it's
trailer too.
yep, and it's
I remember
super
that.
creepy, super creepy, because it's just everything is spiraling out of control at this point, right?
Yeah.
And the knocking and the pounding are all continuing, and then she happens to look over, and that front door is opening up. Oh shit. Now I think they had it locked, because she had locked it at a certain point when the girl comes back and asks for Tamara again, because she's just, finding it a little unsettling, right?
Yeah.
And oh God, so somebody's either got a key or somebody snuck behind her and unlocked it, because like you said, they're definitely toying with their prey over and over throughout this film. And she gets up to that door, and the girl comes back, except this time it is Dollface. She's got the
Yeah.
mask on, and she slams that door shut and locks it so damn fast. And then all the pounding and everything is still continuing. She runs off to the bedroom, freaking out. She breaks the lamp trying to get the light to turn off. And Yeah.
Definitely one of the most tense sections of the entire movie, I feel like. And there's a lot of tense moments, but you are like almost putting yourself in her shoes when it's happening. You kind of feel like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
pressure. You just like got heart racing and everything. It's
Oh yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah, your blood's definitely up throughout all this. So she's there with her knife and she's bleeding and she's freaking out and it's dark and everything. And she hears a door open and then the record players stop. And she's just expecting this is, one of the people in a mask coming in. But no, it's just Scott. He's home. He didn't call out and say, "Hey, I'm home," or anything like that, like a normal person would do. No, he just needs to scare the shit out of her, right? And he does. But
Which
yeah,
again, that doesn't make any sense in the context of what's happening. Like you know that some weird shit happened when you left, and you want to be all weird and try to break
well,
through the
yeah,
door.
and the record's skipping like crazy, and you probably happen to see that there's a ton of chairs knocked over and stuff. You'd think something's up, right? No, no, I'm just gonna walk completely silent down this hall towards this bedroom and freak the shit out of you, right? But he's like, "Hey, what happened to your hand? What's going on? Hey, what's happening?" And she's telling him that there's people fucking with her, and they have masks, and he's like, "What? Like a ski mask?" And no, no, not like a ski mask, comma asshole. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
eh,
why joke about that shit? Like, what?
yeah,
Come on, man.
yeah. It's weird, but yeah, and this comes back quite a bit throughout this film where he just does not believe the extremity of what's happening, right? And but whatever. He doesn't quite get it, that's for sure. So he checks the house with her, and they look behind the shower curtain and all that stuff that you would do, and they walk by the fireplace and don't notice that her cell phone's in the fire. Sparking like crazy as it burns, but whatever. You think you would notice the burning plastic smell? Nah, nah. They're just freaked out. That's all.
Those old phones too. I feel like they would have had a little pop or like a little kind of exploding from the battery.
Maybe,
Like,
maybe. Yeah. When you saw that phone, did it make you just a little nostalgic for those old phones? Just a little
yeah,
bit. It's
totally.
like, I want to be playing Snake on that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the
But,
big old Nokia.
yep, exactly. So they're in the garage, and for whatever reason, Liv decides, okay, this is the time where I need to survey things. So she climbs on some boxes and looks out one of those big high garage windows, and there's Dollface standing on the wall. And Scott comes up beside her, and he's like, "Oh, what's she doing? She looks like a ghost," he says. And
Put out there.
it's like, yes, she looks creepy. That's kind of the point. But people just don't stand there and stare. They have to want something. Yeah, yeah, they do to fuck with you.
Yeah.
But and they both turn to talk to each other, and of course she's gone when they look back because that's how the movies like this play out. But it's effective. I like it. I'll allow it.
Yeah.
So he brings up that I left my cell phone in my car. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, who leaves their phone in their car? But this is 2008. You're not quite, with the phone glued to your hand like we all are anymore at that point. Because I think the first iPhone was what, maybe a year or two after this?
It had to be around the same time, actually.
Yeah, but probably not super prevalent. Smartphones were just not a thing until the iPhone really hit. There were a few, touchscreen things. There's Blackberries were a thing, but it was mostly for business. It's
Yep.
just technology in horror films is always interesting to me because a lot of people talk about with the advent of the cell phone, a lot of scary movies can't happen.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily true, as seen in this movie and many, many others since. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna go and get my phone, and she's like, "What the hell you are?" But
Yeah.
he walks outside, and this is where he finds that his window's smashed in and his car's been hotwired and it's sitting there running. I don't know how they never heard this happen because,
Yeah, I mean, especially with the glass breaking, you would have totally heard that.
yeah, that's the part right there because it's not so much that it's broken, it's somebody has smashed at this glass to have it kind of like caving inward somewhat. You'd have to really hack away at this thing to make it look the way that it does.
Yeah,
And
especially the windshield. Like you can't just
yeah,
throw that one rock and hope that it's gonna go through. Like
no, they really fucked it up. So it's
yeah.
just, again, shocking that they never heard this. But again, kind of have to suspend our disbelief a little bit at certain points in this film for it to actually work. And as he's, looking around for his phone in the car, we get that great little moment of somebody's hand reaching up behind to brush at his neck. And I think it was Dollface that did that. And this is like the first moment where you actually hear one of the strangers actually scampering around as they're fucking with him. But yeah, she scampers off a little ways and then just stands there and stares at him. And this is where he's got to, try to be a big guy and be like, hey, get the fuck out of here. And just stands and stares. And then somebody runs through the woods and he turns. And when he looks back, of course, she's gone now because these guys are so good at this game. I like it though.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's in some ways a little tropey of, okay, the killer can move silently and, just appear and disappear on a whim. But no, it still works for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it totally worked. Back in 2008, like this totally worked for me. And I was unnerved pretty much the whole time, the whole sitting.
Oh yeah, and it still works. Rewatching it even now. Yeah, I find it very unsettling. The audio is just great in this film. Between the super loud knocks and moments of silence, and just it works. So Scott comes back into the house, and he still doesn't believe Liv that they took her phone. He's like, you put it in your bag, he says to her. And, well, that doesn't, yeah, no. But then he stops to bandage her hand with his tie. And it's shortly after this that he finds his phone sitting on the piano with the battery removed.
And it's like, oh, this is really when you start recognizing what's happening.
Yeah, especially the fact that somebody had been in the house again while he was fucking around with the car and she was waiting for him.
It wasn't the rock in the windshield. It was the cell phone with the battery missing.
Yep, exactly. So they're like, okay, we're getting the fuck out of here. Get your stuff. And I think at this point he asks her to put her shoes on, but I don't think she does because that's going to come back again. But they get in the car, and I think the tires were popped as well. But they're backing up, and this is the part that you brought up, where Pinup Girl drives up behind them from out of nowhere, from this super long driveway. It's like, was she waiting for?
Truck.
Yeah, was she waiting for some kind of a cue for this to happen? Because I don't think she would have been able to see them backing up from where she was at. That said, again, super effective. Love it because, like you said, big ass noisy truck and, very, very imposing with the high beams at him and everything. And you see her mask for the first time and, it's creepy as shit. And she rams into their car, and this is the moment where they also see ahead of them, there's Man in the Mask staring at them. He must be pretty confident that they're not going to slip off the brake or anything and run him over. But in any event, they get out of the car and run back into the house, and they let's see what happens from here. They're looking for a gun. And
because Gotta find Dad's gun.
Yup, Dad's gun. I was describing this movie to somebody, and they were like, "Oh, they probably didn't have a gun, did they?" No, motherfucker, they had a gun. It's just they're dumb kids. It's
Yeah.
and just about anybody else is freaked out in this kind of scenario. Even if you did have something, are you going to be able to effectively use it? Well, clearly they're not, but yeah, they find the shotgun up on a top shelf, and this is where Man in Mask starts hacking his way through the door. This door that seems incredibly solid. Yeah, maybe it's a veneer. I don't know, but he's making his way through it, and they barricade the door. Now, did they use the piano to barricade it, or was it like it was something big and heavy, big piece of furniture.
Push it up towards it.
Yeah, there's much screaming going on, so it's kind of hard to tell. But yeah, they barricade the door, and Scott wastes around through the opening. And oh, there was that great chair throwing moment. That what are you gonna do? The opening's this big, and you're throwing a chair at it. But yeah, they waste around, and it's like, okay, we need to go hide. And so they do, and all of a sudden the record player fires up, and it's not them, and we get some creepy Merle Haggard playing. They shift over from folk music to country for a minute, and then things get a little quiet aside from the creepy music, because guess who shows up? It's Glenn or Mike or no, one of those, and he's trying to call Scott, but just gets the voicemail, of course, because the phone's toast. And he's like, "Yo, Jimmy James, I'm drunk as fuck, and I'm here to pick you up." And this is where it's like right when he gets off the phone, somebody throws a brick or a rock or something through his windshield. And
Yeah, they do the search because they hide in the closet and they do the search for the bullets because the bullets weren't with the gun.
oh yeah, I totally missed that part. Yeah, this was
It's right when
yeah.
they go back to find the hiding spot, they go into the
Yes,
closet.
they go into the bedroom and they see hello written in
Oh,
lipstick
right.
all over the
Yep.
window. Yeah. Oh, God, I'm sad we missed that bit. Um, but yeah, they find the shells for the shotgun, and that's when they start throwing clods of dirt at that window, and they
The
go and
stranger.
they yeah, and they go and they hide in a space, and they're gonna sit tight while they hunker down and wait for the police to come. I don't know who they're thinking is gonna call the police, but ultimately they're just gonna sit tight and wait for something to happen. And
While
yes,
pointing the loaded gun at the doorway.
yes, yeah, because whatever comes through that door, it ain't good. We're gonna, strike first, and hopefully everything will be fine.
Later.
So yes, Glenn gets the brick through the windshield, and he hops out of that car with the best "What the fuck is going on?" reaction.
Yeah.
I love it. It was Sunny on at this point. I know it's been on for what
Had to
feels
be.
like
It had to be.
forever. Yeah.
Yeah, it had to be.
But no, he's good. He's some much needed comedic relief in this film, because wow, there is not much that's funny anyway. We need that little tiny relief of the tension, right?
Yeah.
And so he decides to come into the house, and we get some great shots of him surveying everything. Doesn't he come in through the window or something like that, or a patio door, something like that? Because it's not through the front door.
Oh, yeah, he comes in through the side.
Yeah, and then we get that shot of Dollface looking through the front doorway. She's standing off in the darkness, and you only really see her mask because it's so dark. And he's creeping through and seeing all this destruction around him, right? And doesn't call out or nothing, but starts walking down that hallway. And I think he had picked up a pipe or something like that,
Yeah.
because of everything that was going on. At least
Music's still playing at this point, right?
yes, yeah, it's still going. And he starts walking down the hallway, and he keeps almost looking behind him, but
Yep.
not quite ever looking behind him because Man in Mask comes up behind him and he's got an axe or something. And I love how
Slowly
long
walking
this,
behind him.
yes, and I love how long this plays out. It's not quick. They let it keep going. You feel so uncomfortable throughout all of this. And I think it's at this point where Glenn is just starting to call out when he steps into that doorway, and then he takes a shotgun blast to the face.
So quick.
Oh yeah. And of course he's down because he took a shotgun blast to the face.
Yeah.
And Scott and Liv are sad. It's like he wasn't wearing a mask. Oh crap, he wasn't wearing a mask. It's Glenn. And he's like kind of violent with Liv here for a second, freaking out about his situation. And they're pretty shaken up.
Rightfully so.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. I don't know what the hell else we're going to do, but I'm going to go for the radio, he says. There's a radio? Yes, there's a radio in the garage. Apparently his dad was a ham radio operator. I don't know. It's weird. It's old. People still do that stuff, I guess. I don't know.
Yes, so.
And not, I would normally say lucky for them, but maybe not so much, right? So, she's all, be careful and yeah, thanks for that. But they do open up the curtains and there's killer written in lipstick again on the window. God, these strangers are fast, right? It's,
Yep.
but
And
I
there's
also,
three of them.
yeah, that's true. That's true. They're so well coordinated too. I don't know, man. But all right, he steps outside, goes for the garage, and as he's walking up, there's oh no, he runs out into the woods and he kind of hunkers down behind a tree first because of course, got to be careful, right? And this is where Pinup Girl steps out of the garage with a big old flashlight, sort of searching around, and I don't know if his plan was to try to take a shot from that distance or what, but she sees his movement, shines the light right on him, and this is where Man in Mask races up behind him and knocks him out. Or something. It kind of happens a bit off screen. I don't know if it was the thud of him hitting him or it was the gun going off or what, but there is a loud noise. And then that's it for Scott there for a minute. We're back to Liv, and she's just waiting outside on the porch, and she's barefoot still. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm watching this, Liv, put on your fucking shoes. There's broken glass everywhere. You're trying to hide from these killers. What the hell are you doing?
Like, why are you even waiting outside? Like, go back into the
Yes. Oh my God.
Find a corner.
As much as it sounds like we're shitting on this film at this point, it's still wonderful and it all works. And
It does. Yeah.
I'm all for it because, sometimes the tropes are great. And so she decides, okay, I'm going to make a run for it, and runs through the dark and eats shit immediately. And
She does. That's the trope right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, of course, you had to take that tumble, jack her leg up.
Well, yeah, that's the other trope, right? You have to be injured so that it's even more tension as you're trying to get away from the killers. Still, I don't completely hate it. It still works. So she does a lot of crawling around from here on out, right? And there's this great moment as she's trying to make her way to the garage where Pinup Girl is behind her, just slowly following her, but not doing a thing. And still nobody looks behind them in this film.
I understand that.
Yeah, you're in a life or death situation with people who have been fucking with you all night long. And, somebody's clearly been killed at this point, and you're just, you have no awareness of your surroundings at this point. It's, it's a choice, right?
Yep.
But yeah, she's crawling and she makes it to the garage, and there are so many noises going on around this garage. It's
Mm.
clearly there's continuing to fuck with them as they, play their little cat and mouse game. But she does find the radio. She decides to, well, she does find a flashlight first. And I'm also thinking to myself, you're trying to hide in the dark, yet you're using a flashlight. Good job. But, it's fine. Maybe they'll mistake her for one of their own. I don't know. But she does find the radio. She tries to use it. And this is where we get the first words out of any of the strangers in what feels like forever in this film. You hear this little mournful hello. And that's spooky. She starts to hear back from somebody on the radio, and she, lets out this, just super, super mournful help us. And this is where Pinup Girl smashes the shit out of the radio, and no more radio. So Liv runs out of the garage, and kind of stumbles some more and hides a little bit in the woods here. And she looks back at the garage, and there's Pinup Girl just standing there staring out, and then looks over at the swing set, and there's Dollface just swinging away, I think looking at her, and the man in the mask is like standing around in the woods, and it's all very, very clear. They know exactly where she is, and they're just letting it play out. So she crawls a little bit more towards the house, and hey, guess what? Your Volvo's on fire. I love this little bit. You have this little opening in this fence, and you see, the car there burning, and it's like, there is no hope.
Yep.
No hope.
Like this, you guys should have definitely went to somebody's, like a neighbor, like one of those houses around you, because like your shit is all jacked up from this point.
Yeah, yeah. The Volvo is toast, and she makes it back to the house, and she, again, stumbling like crazy, she kind of collapses against the kitchen table there. And is it wrong that I'm concerned that the ice cream is melting at this point? Because I see that big tub of ice cream there. I'm like, that's been out all this time. It's going to be all melty. But so yeah, she kind of creeps through the house, and this is where the lights go out.
Yep.
So let's just continue to ramp up the scares. And I think she hides at this point in the pantry, and it's of course got a louvered door so she can see what's going on. And
Yep.
we
And
hear the
Goop comes in.
piano. Yeah, we hear the piano. It's a repeat of the scale that she was playing earlier in the film. There's a lot of fun callbacks. I appreciate this, but for whatever reason, he doesn't look at her this time. So it's kind of a repeat of the big impressive shot from earlier in the film with him standing in the shadows. Even though I'm still convinced he knows exactly where she's at. And
Yeah.
so she's hiding in the pantry, and we hear his breathing. And wow, this dude does not sound good.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's either very, very sick, or he's been, running a marathon before stepping into this house. But he goes looking around somewhere else and comes back a couple of times, sits down at the table, gets up, walks away. And then all of a sudden, Dollface at the door, and she starts smashing. Yeah. I love that little pop in from the side. That's great. She starts smashing away at the louvers, and for whatever reason, just stops.
Oh,
And
it's part of the game.
yeah, there's just this constant fucking with them. And I love it. She goes
Yeah.
back to the table. She looks down at the ring box, kind of pushes it around a bit, comes back and plays with the knife a little bit before picking it up. And, Liv has come out of the pantry at this point, and she sees her pick up the knife. And so she rifles through and finds like a tiny little paring knife or something. And they just kind of square off against each other. And she goes to run another way, and there's a pinup girl in the doorway, and Man in the Mask is somewhere else. She is very clearly cornered, yet is able to run off to a bedroom, and she locks the door, and she's slamming on the window. I don't know why she's just not throwing something either through the window or just opening it to get the hell out of there. But or no, before she does this, this is where Scott's thrown back into the house by Man in the Mask.
We see him thrown through the sliding door.
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember if he's tied up or not, but he's in a bad way, and he yells for her to run. So that's where she fucks off, and all of a sudden the lights are back on, and I can't remember if she opens the door or just turns around and the door is open. It's
I think she had to have opened it.
God, I don't know, because maybe I just happened to look down or something right at that moment and I missed it. But the door being open was a surprise to me on this viewing. And this is where she steps through it. And yeah, she gets fucked up. Yeah, gets her face slammed into that picture. She's on the ground, getting dragged through Glenn's blood. Yeah, I think this is on one of the posters as well. The man in mask dragging her by her feet.
Yep.
But and then she screams, and then we go to black, and then everybody's waking back up, and they're all dressed up and nowhere to go because they're tied up in front of the fireplace, and it's daylight now. We have they're opening up all the curtains, and it's this horror in broad daylight. I always loved that.
What I really like is the scene. Well, this part of the scene where you can see that they're tied up to two chairs or whatever that are facing opposite directions, and then you see the three strangers, and they're just like standing in a line together, and they're just staring at them. Like that shot is so unnerving for sure.
And Scott and Liv are holding hands, and she's got her engagement ring on still, and yeah, this is the end. And this is where the question is asked why for, I think, the third time in this film, because yeah, it's never asked directly to them until this point, but we get the iconic response from Dollface, because you were home.
Which is terrifying. Like that just like it's so iconic because of how terrifying that phrase is. It just hits you with that like, holy shit, this could have been anybody. Like you were just driving down the street, or you checked out a house before, or you came down here this neighborhood once, and then shit, you realize a car was in the driveway. You're like, oh, okay, this is gonna be the one.
Yep. And I think this is a good point to bring up the story behind this film. I think it was the writer-director Brian Bertino, his experience from when he was a kid, where somebody knocked on his door in the middle of the night or something, and it was like a burglary that happened somewhere in his neighborhood or something, and it was somebody ultimately just searching for a house with nobody home. But his was one of the houses that was knocked on, or it was a story that he read as a kid, something like that. But yeah, that's some creepy shit right there. That this is something that, when they say inspired by true events, this was the inspiration for this film. So this is where they realize that this is it. This is the end. It's time to say our I love yous one last time, because this is not looking good. And this is also where the masks come off.
And they're not looking at the camera, so you never see them, but you see the masks like hit the floor or whatever. And this is, I think, I would say this is probably, if you didn't know it already by this point, where you can see that it's kind of like a family, like a daughter, a wife, and a husband that are just all in it together.
Yep.
Which
they're
is
in this
fucked up.
Yeah. Oh, it's very Manson family in a way. Yeah. And then it's time for stab, stab, stab. and they're taking turns at it too.
Oh,
And yeah, and they do cut away from showing Liv Tyler getting stabbed, and a lot of the end of this, they cut away to shots of just trees and stuff outside as you hear what's happening. And then we cut back to Glenn's phone going off in his pocket. And all of a sudden, we see Liv's chest start rising and falling. She's still alive. She hears the phone and starts crawling towards it. And clearly, she's, not in a good way. She does get to the phone, but just misses the call.
yep.
And then we get the man in mask stepping up behind her, still has his mask in his hand. And we think, oh God, this is it. This is it. She's toast. And she's all crazy defensive. And all he does is bend down and pick up the phone and take it with him and books on out of there
Yeah.
and just
Which
leaves her.
is so crazy, bro.
Yes, it's terrifying, right? The fact that so much of everything that they do feels absolutely random.
It does.
It just makes it a lot scarier for sure.
And
And
I think
so,
that again with the whole, finding a random house, like I think that if they did have a plan, the plan was just to pick a place, but they didn't have any kind of like major plan. They didn't know how many people were going to be in there. Like they didn't know like how many people they were going to kill or what they were going to do. And then you start seeing the writing on the windows and then like the
mhm.
knocking on the door. And it's like you get the feeling that this isn't the first time.
No, no, well, especially for Man in Mask and Pinup Girl,
Absolutely.
because we get that line in a little bit here. But we cut back to the road, and we've got the little Mormon kids on their bikes, and they pull off the road when they see the kids, and Dollface gets out, and we do see her face a little bit here in the wide shot, so it's not super up close. But
Right.
she steps up to the kid and asks for one of his pamphlets, and he asks her, "Are you a sinner?" And
Sometimes.
she's yes. Love it. I love it so much. And
Yeah.
they get back in the truck, and you hear Pinup Girl say to her, "It'll be easier next time." This is just going to keep going on, and in a sequel that is far less well received, to the
I
point
love
where
that they're in that truck, so you just see the three of their heads like perfectly
Mhm.
aligned. It's awesome.
Well, and I also love that Dollface sits in the middle like the kid.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, it's kind of perfect. So now we're back to where we started with the kids stepping into the house. I presume they've already. Well, not necessarily. I think it's probably later that they make the call because they're looking at all the bodies and all the gore and everything. And the one kid steps up to Liv Tyler, hunkers down, and reaches out for her. And this is where she springs to life for one last scare, screaming bloody murder. And then we get credits.
What a movie.
Fucking hell, man. It's great. Oh, God. It's,
Yeah, just talking about it is such a great feeling. And for anybody who hasn't seen this movie, I highly recommend it. Even though we might have sounded like there's a bunch of negatives, I think that it's definitely a time and place. Like,
oh,
2008 was a long
absolutely.
time ago, so
Yeah, yeah.
it holds
And
up though for sure.
absolutely. And, I like the Rotten Tomato scores on this one. It's like about half of the people, of the critics that reviewed this, actually liked it. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is, non horror fans reviewing horror films, which is something we often talk about in the horror community. It's they like to shit on movies like this because they're just not their thing.
The
But
user score is high.
oh yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely. because I think a lot of people that would even bother to watch this are going to, enjoy this type of film quite a bit more. It's, not going to be randos like my folks watching this film, for sure. If they do, massive props to checking out some horror. I know it's not your bag, but yeah, it's God, that's The Strangers. And I think it's, a little underappreciated, but I think
Totally.
it's a
Totally.
hell of a film, and I'm anxious to see what else Bertino does. We mentioned The Dark and the Wicked earlier. Holy crap!
I do have to say, The Dark and the Wicked is a better film.
Yeah, he's
Um,
grown for sure by that point. He also
yeah.
did that one little indie film, The Monster.
Oh yeah, that was
That's
A24, wasn't it?
yeah, that was an early film of theirs for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
A24 or The Monster is awesome.
Yeah, I enjoy the hell out of that. It's again one of those very very contained films because it all like this one where it all takes place in this house. That film all takes place in a car on a dark road, and yeah, works.
That's his bag, though. Like even in The
Yeah,
Dark and the Wicked, it's just a farmhouse. Like I think
yeah,
it's a small community in all of these films.
yeah. There's very little that takes place elsewhere in that film. Yeah, I don't know of anything else that he's currently working on, but again, anxious to see anything else that he would happen to do. I always get him mixed up with the guy that did The Night House, because I know that director is doing that remake of Hellraiser,
Right. It's
which
supposed to be this
is
year.
like soon. Yeah, definitely looking forward to that. Yeah, Dim, any final thoughts on The Strangers?
I mean, I'm glad that we were able to kind of run through the storyline. I really highly suggest anybody who's just getting into horror or who's never seen this film that it's totally worth a watch. The sequel, not so much, but the sequel does it is fun to an extent, but it's definitely not. It doesn't have the same staying power as this one does, and I really just love this film, and it's a 5 out of 5 for me. Um, this is why I wanted to pick it and come on the show. It's such a small cast. It's such a terrifying real scenario that anybody can be in, and I think that's what makes it scary. Is it's not something unnatural like a ghost or a zombie or something. Like it's literal people who are invading your house. This shit happens all the time. It happened up the street a couple days ago. Like
Fuck, man.
so, yeah, this stuff's
Yeah,
crazy, man, and you know.
that does make it extra terrifying for sure. Sure, there's a couple of little moments throughout this thing where you really have to suspend disbelief, like, no,
Yeah.
this would not happen. But as long as you're willing to roll with it, yeah, this film works. Again, Dim, if you'd like, where can people find you?
I'm at Gifted Dim 63, gifted spelled with a Y on everything. Oh,
Nice.
except Twitter actually. I think I had to take the 63 off, but it's Gifted Dim.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, this has been Murders with Mertens, a horror film podcast. Thank you for letting us tickle your ear holes. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe and all that. I'll be back soon enough with another episode. But until next time, stay spoopy, everyone.